So I grew up in the era of the broken window theory with Rudy Giuliani coming in and just saving the day. Doesn't all of this just kind of sound like broken window theory 2.0 to you? It's like, all right, we got a lot of broken windows. Who's going to fix it? How are we going to do this? Well, it comes down to leadership, doesn't it? It comes down to leadership. But, here's the micro of, all right, who is breaking all the windows? And I posed this to a man in blue down in Portland. And I said, hey, here's what I think on this whole broken window thing. Here's what I think is going on. I think you got a bunch of crazy people. And by that, I don't mean a derogatory term. They are mentally not in their right minds. And since everybody else is just bashing out windows left and right in Portland, why shouldn't they? Why should they not be in on the fun? Well, it doesn't take much to pick up a large metal object and just start whacking some windows, which is what happens. Now, we also have broken windows from the riots, from the mostly peaceful protests. We've had that. That has been an ongoing thing. And I think originally that's where a lot of the windows got broken out. And now you've got a situation where it's just a really, really bad look, to the point where the police department has been told, all right, you guys need to take off the wood covering your windows because it doesn't look good. This isn't a good look. This isn't an inviting atmosphere for our criminals who've taken out all your windows with their heavy metal objects. This isn't the environment this isn't the look that we want to hold out there. So I think initially in Portland, you had a bunch of, broken windows from the rioters, the violent activist writers, including Black Lives Matters and Antifa. Let's just call it what it is. They're the ones that broke out the windows. They said that it's not violence if it's against a building and or an inanimate object, which kind of goes against the Webster's Dictionary version of the definition of violence. But that's a whole nother story. It seems like we can just create a definition for whatever we want today. Inflation? Let's talk about it. Recession? We're not really in one, but here's the definition based on that. Crazy stuff, right? So you got crazy homeless people on drugs. You've got protesters that did some real damage up front. And then you've got the other sector is people breaking in and, retail theft, break-ins. So you've got a real combo there. And a lot of that is just based on drugs because a lot of the folks that are crazy in the homeless encampments are whacked out on meth. They seem to find breaking windows to be part of that whole take a whole bunch of drugs and go down that route. Don't forget to check out our members only section on reasonabletv.com. Got a bunch of content you won't see anywhere else. Also, there's going to be a link in the body of the description of this video for our Discord channel. That's where I post stuff, you post stuff. We've got a rock and roll channel in there. We've got humor. We've got general chat. I post all the storylines there that I read. You guys can post storylines there that you want me to read. Discussion. I'm on there fairly often. Check it out. It's free. I'll see you there. Portland, broken window epidemic. Who's behind the vandalism? So let's see what the media says about this. There were more reports of broken windows and vandalism in Portland last year than during the violent protests of 2020. That says something right there, doesn't it? So this is ongoing. And from the same man in blue who came up to Seattle for a concert that I was also at, one of his initial assessments was, hey, you got less broken windows here. You got less boarded up businesses here in Seattle because Portland has more broken windows now than it even did at the height of all of those very progressive, very, violent riots. So every 42 minutes, there's a report of vandalism in Portland, often involving broken windows. Some storefronts have been hit repeatedly. We've seen a lot of it, said landlord Matt Kaplan as a repair crew worked to replace the broken glass outside of his Old Town building. That's downtown. It was the 5th time in 3 years vandals smashed the windows. And the one thing I always want to bring up is these businesses had to go through the pandemic, meaning you're open, you're not open. You're open. Oh, not today. You're not open. Oh, you're open. Okay. Yeah. Got enough money for payroll through to here. Okay. We're going to be open. Don't really know. Going to have to borrow our way out. These are businesses that have been on the edge of probably failure, and these broken windows do not help. So a few doors down, the dispensary, Serra, is hidden behind a huge piece of plywood after its front windows were broken for a sixth time. People are running out of money replacing the windows. They're running out of patience, said Serra employee Kora Burrows. Here in Seattle, got a $2 million fund, and I think they've got like a $1.6 million fund in Portland just to replace damage done to your store. You've got millions in funds because we can't seem to contain something as basic as people running around bashing out windows. It's an epidemic. And you might say, I don't care about those businesses. All right. Well, eventually they're just going to jack up the price of your goods that they're selling to you. You might say, I could care less about Portland. Well, that's fair enough, right? But it's happening in a lot of these cities, and it's happening because they've let it happen. All this stuff that was once, felony, now it's misdemeanor. I understand the state of Washington, we could go from a misdemeanor to a gross misdemeanor on a bunch of stuff in the near future. We're trying to get some teeth behind some of the laws that would clamp down on a lot of this craziness. But man, it didn't happen overnight. This has happened over decades, right? This slow decline where you've got a situation where every 42 minutes, there's a vandalism case in Portland. And that's just some crazy stuff. But it's not shocking because we've watched this happen over years and years and years. Here's a little chart of vandalism cases in Portland. It just basically it's a ramp. It's going up at a pretty strong clip there because that's the reality you've got in Portland. Who is breaking the windows? It's difficult to say who's responsible for the broken windows. Only about 1 in 10 vandalism cases in Portland results in an arrest. So 10%. It's because businesses don't want to call them in because it's a waste of their time. Cops don't want to pursue it because they've got bigger fish to fry. You don't have enough cops in Portland. If you got to go to a call with somebody dying from an OD, you're going to go on that versus following up, who broke the window at your local 7-Eleven. That's just what's going to go on. Court records indicate many of those arrested are repeat offenders or people who break more than one window. For example, police arrested Tyler Miller, also known as Tyler Yaramillo, on September 27th. Officers said the 29-year-old smashed windows at more than 6 different storefronts in downtown Portland using a street sign pole. That's a good use of the pole. Just take it out of the earth, take it out of its concrete, whatever, and just run around the city and bash out windows. That's what you do. I think you should get a mandatory sentence of if you bash out a window. I really do. That would cut down not only on people breaking into stores, it would cut down on the peaceful protesters who are literally masquerading as violent rioters. Give them a year. Give them a year to cool their jets. I don't know, something like that. Something just to think about. On October 12th, prosecutors alleged Miller struck again, breaking the front window at a different store in downtown Portland using a homemade mallet. All right, there you go. Yeah, brought your own tool. At least you're not using city resources such as the street sign pole. Miller is currently being held in the Marion County Jail for an unrelated incident. Not shocking, right? So we've got a probable felon that's just running around doing this more times than one. So we know that's going on. What's the motivation for smashing windows? At first, one obvious explanation might seem to be protests. Following George Floyd's murder, downtown Portland was the center of racial justice demonstrations. Were they really racial justice demonstrations, or were they more anti-police demonstrations? It was hard to filter through all that, right? Because at the end of the day, some of the chants that were going on, they were like, free this individual. I'm like, okay, are we racial justice demonstrations? I'm confused. What do we do? I'm new to this scene. I don't really get it. What are we even doing here? I'm just there with the GoPro covering what was going on. And some of those resulted in broken glass, fires, and property damage. A lot of what was deemed to be peaceful protests were actually, in fact, violent riots where $5 billion dollars of damage was done across the United States, $2 billion of which was insured. That's $2 billion of mostly peaceful protests, right? It's cities on fire burning. And people are like, well, at least it's mostly peaceful. Since then, anarchists and politically motivated groups have also smashed windows sporadically. All right, so you got the repeat offender, guy's probably on drugs. Then you got the anarchists, you got Antifa, and the politically motivated, you got Black Lives Matter, or people just kind of glomming onto that. Because we saw down in Atlanta, in the Stop Cop City, we saw what was going on there. None of those people are from Atlanta. These are mobile protesters that, are international in nature. You had somebody from Canada. You had somebody from France that just recently got arrested down at Cop City for domestic terrorism. But a closer look at the data reveals that there were more reports of broken windows and vandalism in Portland last year than during the violent demonstrations of 2020. That to me is wild. And that indicates you've got a major issue on your hands. And it goes to that broken window theory that Giuliani worked on, right? If you hit the broken windows, being the very small aspect of what was going on, vandalism, then you can start to crack down on crime and, clean up the streets and do all of this stuff. And everybody's like, what are you doing? Broken window. What? And he cleaned the city up, right? He cleaned the city up. Rudy Giuliani to the rescue. So if protests aren't to blame, what is the motivation? KGW asked for a list of all criminal mischief cases filed in Multnomah County last year. A review of those cases filed showed most broken window cases appeared to be random acts of destruction. There was no clear motive. That to me means you've got a bunch of crazy people, mentally ill people that should be in an institution somewhere. They are instead on the streets doing drugs in their tent, walking around randomly bashing out windows. If you go to downtown Portland, you go to any of these areas where you've got the homeless encampments, you'll see what I mean. You got people walking around. I mean, there's a whole bunch of Instagram accounts that I follow. WTF Portland or PDX Real. I mean, they've got video of people doing exactly what we're talking about. Those people do not look sane, and they do look like they're under the influence. So that to me is a large percentage. I would say 60% of the broken windows. And I'm just throwing that out there. And the balance, the other 40%, well, you had some windows being bashed out by Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Okay. During the protests. But then you've got a lot of windows being bashed out in the course of, retail theft, people breaking into stores to get their next, get their next money for their next fix. That's a lot of what you got going on. The records also indicated defendants often self-reported mental health issues and admitted taking drugs like methamphetamines. There you go. I mean, these people are like, I was on drugs. I did it. I wasn't thinking. I was, I want to say cracked out of my mind, but I was methed out of my mind. I admit it. Oftentimes they'll just say that. I don't know what I was thinking about. I did this, this, and this. And people are like, that's not really normally you. Like, I was on the meth. I was on a run. I was just on meth for 3 days straight, and it didn't work out. Several broken window cases were connected to other crimes like theft. The court records showed they were break-ins. So with the amount of break-ins going on, I mean, this is just not shocking stuff, right? This is not shocking stuff, but it makes for such a bad look for the city. It's like, all right, here we are in nice, peaceful Portland. Although that store is all closed up. That one has, it's got that fresh plywood on the front. You got, glass outside of that one because they haven't quite got to the cleanup there yet. And you see enough of that. You see, how about the real estate developer? The real estate developer that was like, all right, this is my cool conference table. This is ML King Way right here. He was at the intersection of ML King, whatever, and whatever. Union, maybe it was. I can't remember. I don't know my streets in Portland very well. He goes, this is my big table. And it was a big table. And he goes, this is where I normally sit. And his chair, right behind the chair, big bank of windows looking out to the street, ML King Way, bunch of bullet holes through. Somebody had shot through the window. Would have hit him right in the back of the head if he was sitting in his normal seat at his normal table. Just taking him out. Like 3 bullet holes right through. So, you've got stuff like that going on as well. That windows get shot out by some gangster driving down the road, shooting at somebody else. Sorry about your window there, Mr. Real Estate Developer. Well, that guy was like, I'm moving. I'm going to go buy a building somewhere. I hope it's in the burbs, because if you buy it in downtown Portland, it might be, you're taking your life in your own hands. And then you've got other stories that I read where residents are like, you know what? There's too much negative attention being put on Portland right now. There's too many people reporting on the broken windows. There's too many people reporting on the homeless encampments. We just need a break from this. And a lot of this will just, resolve itself. And all I can think of is, good luck with that. Good luck with that. Cause this is the runaway freight train wreck that everybody's watching. So who's going to stop it? Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler said he's working to address chronic safety and livability concerns through a series of emergency declarations. We had Safe Summer PDX, 2022. How'd that work out? It was neither safe, nor was it a good summer for Portland. Just sideways. That's all I can say is went sideways. We're meeting with business owners and operators and helping them understand what strategies they can use, said Wheeler. For example, lighting makes a big difference in terms of the frequency of vandalism to a storefront. Yeah, but that crazy person walking down the street high as a kite on meth, they're not going to go, well, this is really lit up. I'm not going to do my dirty deed here. You know what I mean? When the majority of, I think these windows, when I say the majority, I mean 51% are over. Yeah. Take that to the bank. I have no idea. I have no idea what the percentages are, but just all the stories that I read and what I've talked to, I think a good portion of it are people on drugs that, are just out there bashing windows because it seems to me like it's like a fun occupation or something. Is that like a hobby? Do they teach you window bashing when, you're taking all the drugs? I don't know, but it just seems like something that people do, especially here in Seattle. We have the same thing. Somebody ran through and bashed out 18, car windows. That was literally during that big storm we had recently. Windows getting bashed out, people getting the car broken into, people having to leave their car. They come back, their car's just stripped. Welcome to Portland for a day or a lifetime. The citywide lighting plan aims to bring more lighting to sidewalks and storefronts. That's not going to, it's a step in the right direction, but honestly, really, you need to crack down on the wackos taking drugs. That's what you need to do. You need to crack down on the wackos committing crimes to get more drugs. That's what you need to do. But nobody wants to do that because that stuff's hard. That genie's out of the bottle. You're not getting it back in anytime soon. So instead, we're going to focus on lighting on the sidewalks and storefronts. Between 2021 and 2022, Prosper Portland handed out roughly $1.5 million in grants to help almost 400 small businesses throughout the city that suffered damages, including broken windows. Really? How about a little help on the front end preventing this from happening? What about that? Too hard. We don't want to do that. That's too difficult. Other repairs will take longer. Remember when we had a glass shortage during the pandemic? So all these wildly violent protests were happening, windows being broken out everywhere. People couldn't get glass in. You had a supply chain issue. That was horrible. So then, you have a run on plywood because there's so much plywood being put up on stores. And it does. It has a real impact. And I think it has a mental impact on the way that people perceive different areas of town. If you look at, you look at Skid Row You look at parts of the Tenderloin in San Francisco, Skid Row being in LA. You look at Portland. Portland is going to a lot of its smaller businesses having those drop down, roll up metal cages in front of their access way. You know, that real hunker down, the purge is coming. We're going to have this, this bulletproof armory over our entrance. And it's not so much that, it's just that they don't want to have to deal with their doors and windows being broken all the time. So they're going to invest in a little bit more, but it has that look of literally Escape from New York, right? Why are there bars on all the windows? Why are there pull down metal, custom constructed coverings for the doorways and windows in this area? Well, because you got so many people running around bashing them out. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's give them $1.5 million in little tiny bits and pieces to help them fix it. That's what we're going to do. So more lighting, because the crazy people on meth, they need to be able to see what they're working with as far as is it clean enough to hit? Is it, what's in there? Because oftentimes you will see examples of, if you read enough crime reports, they literally just bash the windows out and don't do anything more. Got tons of footage of it out there. They just bash windows in. That is so destructive. It's so disrespectful. And yet I think there's a certain segment of people in Portland that are just totally okay with it. Screw businesses. They've screwed us. Screw them. I think you've got a large portion, not a large portion, but you've got a very vocal portion of the population that is okay with having more windows broken out than were during the protests of 2020. And that's kind of how you get there, right? So what's it going to take on the flip side? It's going to take some real leadership. And guess what? Not seeing that happen quite yet, are we? Here's an example of what I'm talking about. This looks nice, doesn't it? I mean, this is a really nice roll down in front of this business. And you can see it's been freshly painted and it all looks good. You get some graffiti on that bad boy, get some of these windows smashed up, get a bunch of tags in here, tags in there on that nice clean brick. Then you've got the authentic Portland, right? The authentic downtown Seattle. It's the way downtown Seattle used to look, a lot of areas before they were just totally developed. And, and in the Kensington Avenue, that's how everything looks. You've got these roll downs on everything because you don't want to leave your glass open. That's just inviting somebody that's whacked out on, the latest version of, some kind of crazy ketamine or, the trank, which is the xylazine. And that makes people just kind of into a stupor, but there's still enough people out there on meth, I think, that are just bashing in windows that's why you've got such an epidemic of this happening. And then we go on to talk about, hey, in the downtown cores where this is happening, you've got a lot of people that aren't walking around. Amazon in Seattle is going to 3 days back in the office now a week. So from we're all going to work forever remotely from home to I need your ass back in the office 3 days a week. What does that do? Well, that creates a situation where you've just got more people walking around. There's more accountability. There's less instances where there's nobody else out on the streets except that nut job with the, street post that's, nothing else going on. Nobody's around. No cops are around because they're spread too thin because we defunded them. Why wouldn't I bash out a window? Well, if you got more people walking around downtown, there's a little bit more accountability. People are going to be a little bit less likely to do that kind of thing. And so that's a large part of it. And in Portland, you've got a real issue with businesses coming back to the downtown because you've had so many businesses leave. You've had so many individuals that don't want to go back to the downtown core because you've got all this stuff going on. So it's kind of a double whammy, trying to bring people back in so it gets better, but you got to make it better before people want to go back in. So Portland to me is behind the eight ball in so many ways. And yet people who are strong Portland supporters, and there's a lot of conservative people, believe it or not, reasonable people in Portland as well. And they want to see people that have raised their families there. It always hasn't been, this real left of center environment. it's always been a little bit quirky, but it's been a cool city as well. It's just that right now it is really on the struggle bus. And when you got to do a whole article on who is responsible for the broken windows, that's kind of where you're at a point where you're like, okay, this is what we've got going on. What do we do moving forward? And I honestly believe until you get some major leadership changes, this kind of stuff's going to keep on going, because there's always one question I ask, which is, why wouldn't it keep going? All right. That's what I think. That's why I think we're at. Turnaround time on Portland, that's going to be a while. Unless you get some mayor in there, and who in the world in Portland is going to vote for a mayor that's going to come in and just drop the hammer? I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. It should happen. It happen right now, but it's not happening. And in the meantime, you've got, we're going to get up some additional lighting. All right. See how that works out. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.